Welcome, Big Sound. Did anyone see Clare's set last night?
Thanks, ladies. Gentlemen.
And that's only a sample. Marty was telling me backstage that you've actually got a Dixieland band with you going around with you in the future.
We do. I stumbled across this incredible gang of sort of 19, 20, 21-year-old boys doing a Dixieland version of Single Ladies by Beyonce, and it just freaking blew my mind. And I thought I must have them. So a lot of this, they'll be on the road with us.
Anyway, I will introduce myself. I'm Martin Jones from Rhythms magazine, where I've seen Rhythms floating around. Clare and I have known each other a very long time. This is Clare Bowditch, and I don't think we're going to go into too much detail biographically, because you can look up that on your electronic portable device of choice. Instead, we're going to talk a bit about happiness today, I think, because that's the theme of Clare's current record. But first, I'm going to get her to play a song for you,
Sure.
in case you didn't see her last night.
Okay, thanks, Marty.
Yeah.
I reckon I can still do with about half that guitar. I scare myself. So here's an album that I started writing when I was... here's a song that I started writing when I was 19 years old. I played it last night, but I'll play it again for you because I know how many multi-passionate people there are in the audience. It's called An Amazing Life. I finished it 3 months ago. It's the last song to be recorded on this album. You want to write a novel, make beautiful music, act in the theater with inspiring humans, learn a language, run like the wind, help people fit in, travel to every country and make $1 million, smile when your children have babies, make the heart your home, inviting and warm. You want this amazing life, but you can't decide. You think you have to be fully formed already, don't you? You'll be a little bit older by October, and you've reneged on your pre-birth promise. Now you think that this journey is over. Let me encourage you to know you will feel it when it is over. If it feels like hell, take it as a sign you need time to be still and listen for a while. You want this amazing life, but you can't decide. You think you have to be fully formed already, don't you? You want this amazing life, but you can't decide. You don't have to be just one thing, but you have to start with something. You don't have to be just one thing, but you have to start with something. You do not have to be just one one thing, but you have to start with something. Bless you.
Hello. While Claire's just sitting down, I'm going to kind of introduce. Is that us?
Did you know that we're up there? Can we do a selfie at some point? Great.
I'm going to introduce the concept that I'd like to follow. It might not happen. We might get waylaid, but anyway. You've been here probably all week listening to people talk about how to be successful a lot, you know, whether you're in the industry or whether you're a musician or an artist. And I have to say, I've been astounded with the depth and diversity of knowledge that's been at this conference. And if there's still people floating around, you should definitely get out there and have a chat, because there's some amazing people out there. But today, I think we're going to not so much talk about success, but talk about happiness and whether those two can even coexist and how they affect each other. Claire, by virtually every measure in our industry, is successful. She's built a career in music, done it independently, sold a lot of records, been on the front cover of everything, interviewed the Prime Minister, acted on television where incidentally she made most of the actors look wooden.
I did not.
And astoundingly, she's done all this with integrity, completely intact. And on top of that, she has a fantastic husband, beautiful family, and lots of friends.
I have sex 7 times a week. There's heaps of stuff that I don't say publicly.
No.
Sorry, Marty. Where are you, babe? Yeah.
He's not going to show his face
not.
now, is he? No. So, yes, I would like to start by, in fact, and Jeff Chandler, I think I was talking to you, he said, success is more of a journey than a destination. So I would like to open by asking you what your thoughts are, your perception of success at this stage in your career, what you think it is.
Thanks for that question, because it's a good one, and it's something worth thinking about, and it's something that I've always been fairly obsessed with, actually, from a young age. And for those of you who haven't met me before, this is a room where Marty can ask any question, you can ask any question, and I'll answer it, because I like telling the truth about the things that have got myself and Marty to this point in our career. So one of them was being born curious, and that meant that from about the age of from before I can remember, I liked making music. I knew that much, but I also was obsessed with the question of how to live a life well. So I always knew that life was very, very short, and I wondered what the best way to spend it was. I sort of saw my life in those terms from early on. So this question of success and happiness, I've always been on the chase, really. And what occurred to me several years ago, we were in Berlin, we were with our children, Marty and I, our 3 children, and we were starting to pursue an international career, and all the signs were looking good. And I found myself wondering what the fuck I was doing, because I was exhausted, and I'd forgotten, I'd got in that position I'd always been afraid of getting to, which is where at some stage you get the courage to choose to try to make your living out of the thing that you love the most. For me, that was music. It took me a really long time to even get to that point, because I was naturally shy. So really, it wasn't until I was 27. Marty had been seeing me in band since I was 16, because we worked at the surf shop together. That's the truth. And I've watched him...
We were really making the most out of our short lives.
You sure were, baby. And it's been a pleasure to watch Marty follow his passion too, but I think anyone who follows their passion gets to this stage. So I got out there, we were travelling, we were touring, it was exciting, adventurous, all the right boxes are being ticked, but I wondered why it was that what it was in me that was compelling me to go over there. And I realised that we have this story as Australian musicians, that success means being internationally recognised. And what if that doesn't suit you? What if you're happier at home? What if you don't want to tour 300 days of the year? What if you don't want to drag your family around with you? So these felt like radical questions within me, because I'd always just had an idea of that's what happens when you become successful in Australia. You go overseas or vice versa. And that was the genesis of, the first rumblings of this album, The Winter I Chose Happiness. And I came back home and I went to the doctor. I'm like, I feel like shit. And she's like,
She didn't say you look like shit.
she's this doctor, she's a GP, but she's like a hippie aunt, she's like come in. And I said, no fucking aura talk today, Sandra. I just need the real deal. She did all my bloods and she said, you run down in this, you run down in that, you run down in this. Then she said something really unusual. She said, do you know that you were born to be happy? Like, I got fucking bills to pay. What's all this happiness chat? But it allowed me to start asking that question.
Well, we will, because with success, conventional measures of success, which you've had along the way, there's things you've achieved which a lot of musicians would dream of achieving.
You didn't mention the millions too.
And the millions of dollars, of course, and the groupies and all that.
Yeah.
That must put pressure on you to feel that you should be happy.
Yeah, you feel, and in moments I very much was happy, but I wasn't balanced, and I was always worried about making sure my manager was happy and making sure my record company were happy and making sure, I was concerned about a whole lot of things that actually had nothing to do with me. That's not my job in life. So I carried those things heavily, and I think I let them get in the way of experiencing, the fortunate place that I was actually in.
Yeah.
It was never kind of good enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you guys ever have that feeling? It doesn't sort of... And I realise this is one of the human tricks. We all do it. We set a benchmark. We say, this is what will make me happy. I'll have an X, Y, and Z, and he'll look like this and be that, and blah, blah, blah. You get those things, and then you have a week of bliss. Like, I remember the week after winning my first ARIA award, I was walking around going, oh, yeah, I fucking arrived. I've got 2 babies in my belly, and, and then that just kind of wears off because it's all inside our head. Are we telling ourselves that this is that we're allowed to be happy? I wasn't sure I was allowed to. I'm an Australian artist. Aren't I supposed to be miserable a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think...
Isn't that what creating good art's about?
Yeah. There's this weird sense that we're kind of born with, that we have a right to be happy rather than it's a privilege, I think, And so you do something and you do all these things, you go, now I should be happy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Well, the question I started asking myself, which was prompted by, I began this discussion about happiness in our friendship group. We all just, and within Facebook and on Twitter and with my followers and in my family, we all just sort of started giving ourselves permission to discuss happiness. Because you dismiss it because you think it's cliche and there's no point, and it's just a story that you're told to buy something. But in entering in that conversation, one of the things that came up was someone said to me, it's not about how do you actually want to feel? Not what do you want to get or where do you want to be or who do you need to, make happy. How do you want to feel? And I realised that I just wanted to feel peaceful. I wanted to feel useful. I wanted to feel enough.
Yeah. Well, you penned this kind of letter to the listeners of this new record, I guess, that comes with the record. And in that you ask a lot of questions about happiness, even in that letter, which I suppose was written after the album was written. Have you answered some of those? Like, what have you found out about happiness?
Fuck, what did I ask?
Well, yeah, there was all sorts of things, does it exist? Who has it?
Yeah,
Does anyone really have it,
What I've found is that happiness is intrinsically linked to vulnerability and risk-taking. And I kind of knew that along the way, but it's about taking the risk of being contrary in a way. So for me, writing an album that sounded good to me and felt great within me is, I've always tried to do that, but I think this time I was able to do it in a new way. I gave myself permission because this was the theme. The question was, is it possible to choose happiness? And I stand before you as a woman who a year ago would have said, I'm not sure that's true. And now I'm someone who says, I know that that's true. I know that's entirely true. I'm not saying that we don't suffer. I'm not saying that we can have any control over the circumstance in our life, the loved ones who die, the war that we see on the news, the wars that we have inside ourselves are the one thing that we have some control over. And also what I came to realise, we are, and we all know this, but I'll remind you, because we're friends now, we are the most privileged generation, people in the entire world. We have a roof over our heads. We have the privilege of having enough money to buy a ticket or enough friends to scam a ticket to get here. We have this comfortable lifestyle that generations have talked about. And in a way, one of the obligations that we have that comes with that is to use this privilege and use these brains to live good lives and to give a lot, to contribute to a better world. And that just sounds like something that before I met John Butler, if I'd heard him say, I'd go fucking, yeah, zebra man.
That was your Miss Universe speech, wasn't it?
That was my Miss Universe speech, exactly. And now I feel it in my guts and in my bones. It's the thing that I feel strongly.
Yeah. Well, I want to get on to helping others a bit later, but first, there's I think there was a interview with you in The Age. I think it was today. I think have a look that Andrew Watt did.
Right.
And you said something interesting in that, you know, you said we're focused a lot on what we do when we should really be focusing on who we are. And I'm just wondering how closely is that question related to being happy, do you think?
For the record, I have to say this is not a self-help album at all. So it doesn't, it doesn't have
Fair
those answers. I think anyone who's heard it knows that. What Marty and I are talking about is just the personal journey, that the PhD that I did internally to get to the point where I could write this album. So that question about externals and judging ourselves on externals, it's something that we touch on a lot in modern day addiction. It's been a theme right through my career, because when I realised that I was going to make a go of it in music, one of the things that I found confusing was I couldn't see people who were doing it the way I wanted to do it. I know they were there, but I couldn't hear their voice and I couldn't see them. What I saw were women being successful by being hypersexual. And, anyone who knows my story about the tantric singing workshop I did last week that Lisa Mitchell accidentally enrolled me in, it's a long story, will know that, sexuality is to be enjoyed. But what I saw were just images of women who were young and thin and didn't have many clothes on and shimmied in a certain way, and I couldn't hear them singing or telling a story that I understood or recognised. So your question was, just rephrase it for me again. It was about
we're focusing on that question of who am I?
Yeah, rather than what I look like from the outside. Going.
Is that a sort of start for you for it, to finding happiness?
Well, it had to be part of my career. This is why a career in the arts is so fascinating, because you get to ask these questions. In fact, you have to if you want to continue making work. So I decided that there was no point on me focusing on the externals, because I couldn't win in that game. There was no, I didn't want to win in that game. I would die in that game, and that's the truth of it. My sister was a model, and I watched all the way through my teenage years from very close up that industry and what it was and what it did to a woman, to be judged entirely on what they look like. And this is, again, I make the point, this is not to say that we shouldn't enjoy ourselves, dress beautifully, show off our booties. But this was about music, and I resented that. I thought, why the hell do we have to look a certain way in order to create music? And I also thought, why the fuck do we have to be famous in order to make a living out of, the arts in Australia? As Marty said the other day, imagine if every plumber, the only way they could make their living was to be known, their name to be known by every Australian. Like, it's quite a journey. Yeah. So that brings me back to the point of you can only be who you are, and very much the journey of happiness for me has been about measuring not the external factors, because there's always someone who's selling more records than you, and there's always someone who's thinner than you, and there's always someone who, etc. But to ask myself what am I feeling in this experience? What, is this the best work I can create? Are people responding to it? Does it mean something to someone? Yeah.
Yep. Hey, on a personal level, I know this might not be worth asking. Tell me if it's a stupid question, but...
As if.
But,
these move, just so you know, so we can get really comfortable. Just relax.
I am getting gradually more horizontal. I've noticed. A lot of songwriters talk about the fact that songwriting is their version of psychotherapy, basically.
Yeah.
You've gone through grief, lust, happiness. Mm-hmm. Does it work for you like that?
I think psychotherapy is its own separate thing, and I think it's a valuable relationship to have with someone at some point in your life. I genuinely believe that, and I say that as someone who went to my first psychotherapist at 15 and have had some great relationships with, art therapists and others along the way. Strangely enough, I didn't need therapy when I was making this album. So perhaps in a way it does serve that role, but it is also something else. It's, it allows a deep questioning. It allows a space where you get to ask some things that you think are worth asking. Is it therapy? It's something. It's definitely part of living life. Teasing through things, coming to some conclusions that make sense. Yep. I worked in a call centre when I was a uni student, and one of the things that I struggled with the most about full-time work, coupled with full-time study, was that I had no time to think, and I didn't know what I was feeling half the time, which is why I was smoking a pack a day and getting smashed most nights. And that was fun too. But I remember during that time I went to the record store, Polyester Records in Melbourne, and I saw a picture of this guy called Jeff Buckley, and I bought his album, and it said that if you bought his album you got a free ticket to a concert that he was playing with only 50 people in Gaslight Radio. It was, not Polyester. Anyway, I remember going to that concert, seeing him play that night, and it being like a crack opening in the life that I was living. I had that memory again of, oh shit, this is what music can do, and this is why we're here. And it just sounds like, again, like an urban myth when you talk about Jeff Buckley in that way, but sincerely, that experience of seeing him play by a candelabra with 50 people in a room when I was a teenager.
Which brings me to Leonard Cohen.
Leonard.
I mean, you got to share a bottle of Grange with Leonard Cohen. That must have been a particularly surreal experience.
It was, the whole thing was surreal. Like, to get a phone call from my agent, Scotty, to say, Leonard Cohen wants you to come on tour with him. I wasn't expecting that. Who expects that in life? It's the guy I've been listening to. So yeah, that was a really precious experience, and it ties in well with this question of happiness. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think Leonard's happy?
Leonard and I had a chat out the front of a hotel in Adelaide, and just to put everything in perspective, I got invited to tour with Leonard. Leonard is also known for his hospitality, particularly towards women, and as my husband said, he's never been concerned on me once when I've been on tour. That was before Leonard Cohen. So, immediately the next thing that happened was we met him. He invited us in for a drink. How are you, darling? No, how are you really? Like, you immediately sensed that he was a person who was always asking questions, big questions, and waiting for the answers. He wasn't in a rush. And then he invited us to fly in his jet with him and to travel with him and to come into his community really for that month. So we're sitting out the front of the Hilton, I think, in Adelaide, and we just would get right down to the conversations. It's very rare that you get a moment alone with Leonard. There's always lots of people around. And we looked at each other and he said, what is it? I said, Leonard, do you believe in God? And he said, do I believe in God? Do I believe in God? No, I know God. And I went, really? And from that conversation, he spoke about his experience searching his whole life through all. We can just listen to his music. You know the kind of lows he's been on and the kind of highs he's been on. And then one day at 62, He sat down and it dropped for him. He got it. And he was telling the truth. And then somehow we got onto a conversation about his sex life, which was other than that, and then it was interrupted. It was just talking about women, basically, and the women that he'd had in his life. It went from God to sex. I mean, this often happens, doesn't it? God to sex to next thing. But the point being, there was an example of someone who, he's not, there's no perfect person, but the search had been worth it. That's what I took away from it. The search for him had been worth it. And he'd, at a certain point, made a conscious effort. It wasn't just random. There's a lot of work that went into him finding his happiness.
You had to write a lot of miserable songs to be happy.
Fucking oath. Yeah.
Look, it's interesting you brought up God there. I mean, many, many people, and you read it time and time again, only ever achieve, it seems, personal happiness through some kind of spiritual devotion in the end. That's where their search leads them. And I guess if you were looking for an elder for spiritual guidance, Leonard wouldn't be such a bad choice.
Yeah, he's pretty decent. I think there are ways to have these conversations that don't, we hear the word God, and many of us, the shackles go up, and you kind of, and no one can be blamed for that. But if we push away those definitions and just start inquiring, what matters to us? What are we here for? All of those big questions. Sometimes the framework of spirituality gives us a place to ask those questions within and a community to do it within. So I think no one should ever be afraid of going there. But we need freedom too, don't we, to ask those questions. Nobody really likes being told.
Well, you need to find them for yourself, don't you?
You do, ultimately. And that's the deal.
Yeah, that's the search. More revealing, you said you found a feeling in Leonard's sort of presentation of the truth that felt to you like happiness.
Yeah.
Those were your words. And I've knowing you for as long as I have, I've never felt that you've spoken anything but the truth, really, both as an individual and a musician. Was that sort of more an affirmation of your own instinct, getting that feeling from Leonard?
It was. It's good when what you hope to find in an experience actually occurs. So for me, the experience of standing side of stage and watching Leonard present the same show again and again, but every time to do it with life, to do his little skip off stage, and you believed him every time. He was truly in that moment. And I just appreciate the way he tells the story. He's not telling us to slap pink paint on and forget about the suffering. He's saying that even within that suffering, there's some happiness. This is such a funny conversation to have, because I don't know that I've ever had a public conversation like where I present myself as pretty much the guru of happiness. I hope it's not coming across that way.
Yeah. Well, no. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, shit. Sorry. Tell me if it is.
Everyone's probably just as confused still. But which brings us to it does bring us to a point though, because I'm interested in, you've always liked working with others and helping others where you can, and mentoring others, and you are about to do more of that soon, I understand, in a sort of more formal way.
Well, I've always had the pleasure. I was saying before that I found it a little tough to find role models in music early on in my career. I've found them since, but I couldn't see them early on. And I was one of those people who always made friends with older women and looked up to them, and in a way they became my mentors. People from all different walks of life, from business, from school friends, etc. I started mentoring artists in a formal way about 10 years ago. I ran a community house course at Span Community House. It was called Self-Promotion and Management for Musicians. And it was something like $40 for 10 weeks. And, some of my students were Geordie Lane and Eva Popov, and also when they were teenagers. And it's something that I loved doing and took pleasure from. I've always felt very fortunate to have been able to make my living, and a really good living, out of music. So next year I decided to step it up a little bit. I feel and have understood over the years that it's confusing times for everyone in the music industry. I find them exciting times, really exciting times. I think there's more possibility for good music to get out there if you're clever and you've got the smarts about you, which I know all of you do. Otherwise you wouldn't be bothered being here. We have a lot of right brain, do you know what I mean? Right brain, left brain, right brain being that creative side, left brain being the more logical, strategic side. I think the areas where artists sometimes don't get to explore are the left brain side. I know what makes a long career for people is having someone who either knows the left brain side or can help you with it. So what I mean is the practical skills to make a living for yourself. I think it's very, very important that artists are able to make their living. I know that we have a lot of issues around money. I think you cannot continue to make your work unless you're able to make your living. And if you don't make your living, I miss out on hearing your music, and my kids miss out on hearing your music. And I think that's sad. And I've seen it happen hundreds and hundreds of times with great artists in Australia over the years. The reason I'm still able to be 5 albums in is because I had great managers, and I had Marty Brown on the side, always teaching me and guiding me. So next year, with all of that in mind, we're launching a new enterprise. It's called Big Hearted Business, and it's an online creative business mentorship. It's to support artists in a really practical way, and it's not just musicians, it's for creative entrepreneurs, it's for people who are in other art industries, but it's a place where people can learn those kind of skills in a language that makes sense to people like us. And that's, again, just a massive gap that I saw that a lot of people at this conference are seeking to fulfill. So I see exciting times, and I hope that makes some contribution to some artists being able to give Australia the rich, deep cultural pool that we long for. I know from my board position on Music Victoria, being an APRA and PPCA rep, I see where it is that great artists drop off. It's often at that point where they need to make the transition into really making their living out of it, and I don't want to see it happen anymore. So the other point of Big Hearted Business is it's talking about the new face of business, and this being that unless you are a business who actually gives a shit about the people that you serve, you're not going to survive in the new millennium. So part of our deal is that we contribute 20% of all of our profits to organisations who we see either supporting artists or supporting microfinance in third world countries, like Kiva or IWDA, or organisations who actually make a contribution in the world.
Round of applause.
Thanks, mate.
This is going to be my Miss World speech, but I guess a lot of people tell you, and it's part of your theory before of taking a risk and going out on a limb. When you help make someone else happy, that's probably one of the greatest feelings of happiness you can experience yourself as well. And
yeah,
which is probably something you've found through this mentoring.
Absolutely,
yeah.
That's why I do it. I do it for incredibly selfish reasons. It inspires me. I love doing it. I love being of help. In the happiness research that I did for this album, which involved taking lots of risks, asking a lot of questions, reading books that I never thought I'd take off the bookshelf, interviewing artists and nuns and psychologists and so on. In that experience, I also had a back injury, and I was on my back for 12 weeks. And when I was sitting there in my bed running my little empire, as Marty was peeling my grapes for me, etc., bringing them on, I did an online life coaching course. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a qualified life coach. I really wanted to challenge myself to say, is there anything in there that's useful? So I finally found someone who I didn't think was speaking bullshit, and I did a course, and it's been a pleasure to, I've been, practicing in a really formal way with some amazing Australian artists on the sly. God, I haven't enjoyed myself so much in a really long time.
Right.
But I remember being in the depth of suffering when I was 21. I had a terrible, terrible year that year. And I could see no logical reason for my life to continue at that point. I really remember thinking, I just can't see into the future. So this radical thought occurred to me that if my own life wasn't useful to me, how could it be useful to other people?
Yeah, right.
And I was really unwell at the time, and this was part of my recovery. was starting to do random things for no reason that would help someone. And that was, you know, helping a lady cross the road, walking a neighbour's dog, basic stuff, all the stuff that we see, you know, people say, how can I be helpful? I did, and that was just integral to my recovery, to realise, you know, that we feel useful by acting useful. And we do that for ourselves as well as for other people. So, you know, philanthropists are lucky people. That's my theory.
Well, I've been a terrible host and haven't brought any kind of timekeeping device up with me. Do we have time for Claire to do another song?
Does anyone have any questions? Do we have time for any? Does anyone
do you want to do
have
questions
anything
first or song first, then questions?
What do you want? Song first, questions. All right. What song? All right, do a song. Okay, then you get some questions. Thanks.
Okay.
What time is it? Great.
Quick song. Oh no, we've got to 11:30, haven't we? Song then questions. Great. Marty Brown was just backstage saying before that he's never heard Claire play this song on a piano. Is that right?
Yep. That's what I meant about taking risks. That was a bit of an evil laugh, wasn't it? So, no, I haven't really played this song very much on the piano. And, or very much at all. But I thought, why the hell not? We're all friends here, like I said. I thought it'll suit what we were just talking about, Marty. Hello, me. Just adjust my hair a little bit, shall I? Slip into something more comfortable. The song's called Thin Skin. It goes back to that discussion we had before. I always thought that my sensitivity was a burden, something that I needed to get rid of, something I needed to toughen up around. And someone once proposed the theory that, in fact, sensitivity is our great gift, and that we honour the world by protecting our sensitivity. So here's a song a little bit about that. Always breaking every single bus trip and every single train. I fall in love with the babe in the arms of the driver of the bus, or the girl with the green eyes that clearly needs a little loving. I wanna touch her, born into this skin that feels just a little too thin. I ain't never sure if I belong in. You tell me not to be afraid, never to forget. We're so lucky to feel the world the way we do. Hey, we're so lucky to feel the world the way we do. Hey, we're so lucky. Hey, baby, we could be so happy. Hey, baby, why you could be my, we could be so happy. Yours to choose, no more blues. We could be so happy, happy, hey, hey, ooh, 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 ooh. See a little boy fall upon the concrete, sees bleeding knee, feel it in my heart as though I pushed him. And I cannot read the news. If I do, I cannot sleep with the pain and the stories of the people that I'll never meet. That does not help them. Oh, born into this skin that feels just a little too thin. I ain't never sure if I belong in. You tell me not to fret, never to forget. We're so lucky to feel the world the way we do. Hey, we're so lucky to feel the world the way we do. Hey, we're so lucky to. We could be so happy. Yours to choose, no more blues. We could be so happy, happy, hey, hey, ooh, ooh, ooh,
Right, we've probably got time for just a few quick questions. I think we have a microphone probably out there somewhere. If you want to put your hand up, we'll place the microphone in front of you, and I think we've got one down the front here.
Just take a question from the front, thanks very much.
Hey, did I guys tell you the album was out today? It's today. It's
today.
our birthday, huh?
There you
Thanks.
go.
Thank
That's
you.
fantastic.
I don't know how to ask this question, but I'm just going to try.
Should we go somewhere private? It's fine.
Can we? It's just the two of us. You talk a lot about contentment and being happy. Is that sometimes, I don't know how to ask, I'll just say.
Yeah.
Is it sometimes an obstacle to being successful? Because
Yeah.
I feel really content
Yeah.
as I am.
Yep.
And sometimes I think, oh shit, I should be more like, I want this. If I don't have this, I'm going to die. But yeah, so do you find that it is an obstacle sometimes?
Yeah.
Because quite happily I could just go to a deserted island and,
Yeah.
eat coconuts.
I
if
understand
that's
the
what-
question implicitly. Yeah, okay, thanks. It's a good one. During the course of making this album, I had the pleasure of interviewing some people for this thing called the Winter Happiness Summit. So I interviewed Missy Higgins, Gautier, Dr. Robert Holden and Stephanie Dowrick, and they're MP3s that we're giving away free to anyone on our mailing list over the next few weeks. And the reason I bring it up is because Dr. Robert Holden said something to me, and he said, in his own delightful way, it's here already. Happiness is already here. We think that we're going out there to search for it, and actually occurs. So the question to ask ourselves is, how do we define success? For me, success meant coming home, being peaceful with my family, or being sort of spending that energy that you would normally spend on getting the world to know you there, here in my little suburban block. Taking jobs that were close to home, Offspring, for example. What a fantastic thing to pop up. So I think it's a great question to be asking yourself, but you're not going to be any happier when 50,000 people buy your album than it sounds like you are right now. So we all have to make a way to make our living, and in some way there is some... there has to be some point of real energy where you're really investing a lot of yourself into it, absolutely. But it's not worth giving up your happiness for.
No, and I
Thank
think
you.
that the point is that you have to make the choice yourself. That's where the
Yes.
peace comes from.
That's
Whether you
right.
choose conventional measures of success and happiness or you choose your own, you have to make that choice for yourself, and that's when you feel peaceful, I think.
One of the things that Marty Brown, my Marty, said to me this morning, we were having a chat over breakfast, was just that it's great to remind artists that you can actually do it your own way. We've never had commercial radio play. We've never had any of the traditional things that allowed us to have a sustained career. We did things slowly, and we chose to do that because it worked well for our family. Like that, you can actually make the choices that work for you in your career. You don't have to do it the way that you saw X, Y, and Z doing it, which is part of the reason it's so exciting to be in these times. You have that direct access. You create work and dedicate yourself to your work and make it the best that you can do. And there are people in the world who will want it. You know, they don't have to go via whatever narrow, band of good that commercial radio is dictating, or even Triple J or Radio National or anyone, community radio. You can do your own thing. Hopefully you get some support along the way, and I'm sure you will.
Do we have any other questions out there? Look, we've been so comprehensive. We've silenced them.
Don't be shy, you can ask me anything. You want to ask me about most people just want to ask me about how to have a family and a career. Is anyone curious about that one? Yeah, okay, yeah. Here we go. So how would you frame your question? Yeah. Yep. Think. Great. So the question here is, I found it hard to find time to think when I did full-time study and full-time job. How do I find time to think now that I'm a full-time mother? And this is how I did it. I removed the part of my brain that said I had to do anything perfectly. I just took that story away and put it in the bin. And I realised that all I could ever do, you cannot compete with any other human being, because they all have their own challenges and we have ours. And the one for me with children was saying, can I make the radical decision to take them on the journey with me? That is our family life. Our family life is our business life, is our touring life, are our friendships, it's all in there together in the mix. So I didn't think so much, I just would pick up the guitar and I would respond to that urge. You know that urge when you see someone that you love and you want to give them a hug? That was the feeling I would have with my music. I would long for it, even as I was doing the breastfeeding and this, that and the other, and loving that experience. There was still a part of me that it doesn't die just because you have children. I thought it had to, in my head somewhere along the line, I thought I was going to start wearing pearls and a twin set and I was going to stop cussing. And, in the same way that you imagine that when you get married to someone, you think you're never ever going to want to hug another human being. We're just humans, Marty's cool with that now. He sees me hug people all the time. You know what I mean? Like we can't pretend we're not who we are. So if your creativity is an integral part of what makes you tick and what makes you feel alive, you honour that and you give that, you pass that on to your children. And sometimes for me, you'll hear all of my demos and me, I've gone, here kids, have some jelly beans. No, like I ration out the things like television time or the grandma's visit or, a baby chino, to make it fit in with the fact that I'm going to get 5 minutes with my tape recorder at the piano, clomping away. Every single demo you hear, Mom, please, or they come and play along, or it's all so freaking messy, and I just want to make that really, really clear. And the other thing is that you have friends, partners, your lover, whoever it is, you make it, you have the courage to say, it's really important to me to have half hour on my own every day. Would it be okay if, and you hand the baby over and you fuck off to another room in the house, or you go down to the cafe. I remember in Melbourne getting my first day to myself when I was writing Autumn Bone. The first day, and my baby must have been, 7 months old or something, and I got a whole day. And I remember the pleasure of that, because I'd been writing that album with insomnia through the night. I'd just been unable to sleep, and I'd get up and I'd think, fuck it, I'll just pick up the guitar and record what I've got. So the point of this is, it's messy, you do what you can. There'll come a time in your life where you have more time. Your children will eventually go to school, but it's all possible. Don't stop because they come along, because you're robbing them of the experience of having an incredible creative mother and father. Does that make sense?
What about your energy, though? I mean,
yeah.
You get to that time of day and you've done all those things and you put the children to bed or you've got them dinner. And most of us just want to flop down and go to sleep. But
yeah.
do you actually get energy from...
Yes.
you get more energy from doing it rather than
Yeah.
not doing it.
There is a point where you just do not want to do it. There's nothing you want to do less. And maybe 5 nights of the week you do that. You do nothing. You have a glass of wine, whatever. Or you just go unconscious in your pajamas and wake up with toothpaste on your face and go, I was just brushing my teeth and I fell asleep. I don't know how that happened. This is seriously what happens. But you allow yourself to be yourself. You know, you allow yourself to be messy and all of that. And you just keep doing your best. It's just a few minutes a day you're reconnecting with the part of you that makes sense. I hope that sort of goes somewhere along the line. And the other thing is really taking serious responsibility for the fact that, and this is something I found in the Happiness Project, if you do those basic things, like you sleep when you can, you eat vegetables, basic stuff, you drink enough water, you don't drink too much alcohol, you go to bed early if you need to, all of that stuff during that first year of having a kid, really important, really basic. Do what everyone tells you to do. Like, just, you know, don't be amazing. You don't have to be amazing. Green smoothies changed my freaking life, though, I can tell you that much. Honestly, like when you take responsibility for the things that you put in your body and the amount of energy that you feel, it changes everything. And for me, another boring practical tip, but a really big one was sugar and coffee. Like, I was so totally addicted to it and loved it and lived for it and used it to get through that first year or two of, you know, when you have a kid. But then I found when I dropped it, much more energy, much more happiness, much more happy thoughts. Yeah. Should we write a book about it?
Baristas Association of Australia, you know.
Sorry, say that
The
again.
Baristas Association of Australia is not
Yeah,
going to be
I
that happy
know.
with you.
Decaf.
They
It's
sell
really-
tea as well.
It's such boring advice, I know.
Yeah.
It really is, but I've just found you have to allow yourself to be a bit boring if you want to have a creative life and a family. Like, don't think you have to be amazing all the time.
Lovely. Well, I think that's probably out of time there, but I really thank you so much, Claire, for being honest and open again.
It's such a pleasure. If people do want to know more about Big Hearted Business, just join our normal mailing list and we'll let you know more about it as the year goes on. I also really want to hear what you want, like what would help, what do you need to know, all of that stuff. So I'll be sending out a survey in October.
And as Claire said, the album, The Winter I Chose Happiness, is out today. So
Thank you,
get out
everyone.
there and have a listen. And thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you. And I just want to thank everyone here for coming so early in the morning, and thank you for this incredible conference. And I also just want to thank, while we're here, Marty Jones for making an amazing, one of the best music publications in the whole of Australia, the one that I would recommend you subscribe to passionately, and that's Rhythms magazine. It's just, I freaking love reading that in the bathroom. I love the Alan Lomax is amazing. So
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.